Hello, everyone. Here we are again after the lunch break. I hope that you have time to have rest of it. I'm really excited about this session that we are organizing in a collaboration with CITES Serbia, role of theater for children and youth in green thinking. And I'm really thrilled that we have great panelists with really specific perspectives and experience about and reflections on this topic. And I will, because of the time limitation, I will now introduce them, and then I will just give you a short brief about the structure of the session. Firstly, we will have 5 to 7 minutes for each panelist to give the position about the topic, how they see the possibilities of green thinking in this TYA context, and then we will start a conversation with as a dialogue, and it will be open for your questions and comments all in chat box, but also through the raising hands and things like that. I'm really glad that I can introduce Julia Dina Hesse, who is dramaturg, director, and scholar based in Germany. She worked as a dramaturg for young opera at National Theatre Mannheim and was in charge of marketing and public relation. After, she was artistic director of Young Theatre Munster, where she directed several performances that was toured internationally, which is also important for this topic. At present, Julia works internationally as a freelance dramaturg and director in the field of theater for young and for children. She holds workshops for children, teenagers, and adults, and has the published articles and papers in this field related books and magazines. Since almost 10 years, she has been a lecturer at the theater department at the University of Munster, and now she received a postgraduate scholarship at the University of Hildesheim in researching about theater and sustainable transformation processes on and off stage. She has been on the board of CITES Germany since 2015. Now is working as vice president, and also she is a member of the executive committee of CITES International from last year. And yeah, we will hear how she is passionate about exploring new ways of intercultural cooperations. Sorry for a bit longer biographies, but it is, for me, everything of this is important, so I didn't cut them a lot. So Julia, welcome. Also, I would like to welcome Emily, who studied marketing in a business school, but as she said, she never worked in business. Her first job in 90s was a communication mission in the field of the France National Orchestra in Paris, and then she oriented towards performing arts. Then she worked as a public. She worked in the sector of public relation, and then Emily put her knowledge into practice of some learnings for the business school as a manager in artistic company that she worked for years and worked with independent artists. Almost 20 years ago, she became a financial manager of Periscope Theater, and then she was elected to lead to be new head of the company. Since 2013, she has been a general manager of Theater Massalia and Marseille, a performing arts for young audience organization, and she is also a member of a CITES France, of the board, but also from the last year, she's a member of executive committee of FACITEJ as well. So welcome, Emily. And of course, our colleague, Tijana Grumić, Serbian playwright and a dramaturg. Her plays were staged in theaters around Serbia, as well in Slovenia and Italy. And also she's working at the Faculty of Dramatic Arts. And for her work, she has been awarded for her playwriting, both in Serbia and internationally. Tijana has been a participant in several international theater residencies and exchanges, which is very important when we are speaking about new perspectives and new formats, especially in this sustainable way of thinking. And she writes both for young audience and adults. So thank you all for the participation in this panel and the conference. We are very excited to hear your thoughts. And so, Julia, I'm giving this Zoom floor to you.
Thank you very much, Joanna, and thank you all for the invitation. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here today. And as we have like 5 to 7 minutes as introduction, I will just share some pictures to draw one bigger picture of what I am researching and working on in the interrelation of theater for young audiences. And I'm sorry, I have to organize my screen now. And sustainable arts. So this first picture is just, as Joanna kindly introduced myself, one part of me is working with ASITEJ, both ASITEJ Germany and ASITEJ International since last year. And so I just would like to point out that ASITEJ, as a global association for artists and young audiences, is working very much in integrating green practice and also green art into their thinking. And you can easily see this from the 3-year artistic dramaturgy, which is framed by the title of Regenerating. And so there are different aspects that we will focus or have focused each year. And for example, this year in Helsingborg at the ASITEJ Artistic Gathering, the subtitle was Handle with Care. So we had lots of programming around sustainable practice. There was an agency from Denmark who did some advice on this, but also there was this idea of new ways of programming. And so the artistic program consisted only of indigenous companies and their shows. So this is just an example to show on how many levels an association like ASITEJ can take responsibility and can help move the sustainable transformation and especially the awareness rising forward. So this is like the first thought around ASITEJ. In the second picture, yes. I am pretty sure that all of you have come across the Agenda 2030 and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And of course, for my research in my PhD, I also am considering what is written here. And just in this context, I would like to say that there is a lot of ambivalence for myself in these goals, as they are sometimes very paradox or contradicting themselves, and they are clearly written in the perspective of a capitalist Western view. And so already the wording development is questionable. And for both for our practice or my personal practice and also for my PhD research, I found it more helpful on concentrating on the idea of sustainable transformation as a cultural activity and a cultural dimension. And this is clearly lacking in the Sustainable Development Goals. But I don't know if you all know also the UNESCO Action Program Education for Sustainable Development, which I think is rather helpful and interesting for the work we have in the performing arts, because it is written, I'm just quoting, education for sustainable development allows every human being to acquire the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values necessary to shape a sustainable future. It enables people to participate in decisions about the way we do things individually and collectively, both locally and globally, that will improve the quality of life now without damaging the planet for the future. So personally, I feel like this definition is useful for our work in the performing arts, thinking of cultural education as a tool for sustainable transformation. So next picture, I'm very sorry, it's a lot. I will be shorter now. So what I have come across also a lot in my research, and also when I watch shows recently, especially in Germany, is this phenomenon of climate anxiety within youngsters. So there has, for example, been this study from the University of Bath last year, which stated clearly that more than half, almost 80% of young people are afraid of the effects that climate change will have on their personal life and future. And also when you watch what is happening on stage, especially in the shows that are done by young people, like this is the picture of a young ensemble with teenagers between 16 and 25. And they have a lot of dystopian and dark pieces that they show us, and they are like protests. And so this is, here we come to one role that theater for young audiences can take. It can give a stage for these young people, and it can help them to express these fears, their anger, their protest, their demands towards decision makers. And so we can get into a dialogue with young people, and different to others like politicians, sometimes educators, or even the media, we can take them seriously and work together with them on how we would like to envision the future. Next picture. So this is like to get to a more hopeful or positive angle, what theater or performing arts in TYA in young audiences can do is trying to identify what kind of hopes and motivations can be in thinking of our future. And here I'm really interested in listening to Tiziana, what she's going to say, how she's writing her plays, because it is all about new stories, and it's all about not coming up with a plan B, but with lots of alternatives. And this is what our art is about, thinking in alternatives to the given. And the guiding question would be, in what kind of future would we want to have lived in? So this is for this hopeful future. Next picture.
Yeah, super. Yes,
perfect. So this is just some examples for shows that that are on these new stories and new protagonists, and they are not only focusing on the relation between humans, but between humans and all kinds of beings in this planet. It's about searching for a new perspective that is less human-centered, but tries to acknowledge both the needs and values and dignity of other forms of life and existence beyond our own one. So creating new stories and new ways of living together is something we can do on stage, and how we can try and motivate our audience to help and make this vision come true in the future, and leave this existing system and capitalist logic of how things have to be. And the last picture is just to show also for this is a symbol for this new way of living together, or different possibility to start exploring and experimenting around these questions on content, narration, and form. So it's really about the ways we think of new dramaturgies to how to tell about a storm or another nature phenomenon. How can we put animals on stage without animating or using them as protections, mere projections of ourselves? So this is just a glimpse into the future that is different in questioning in center the term of power and hierarchy, and how we can start thinking of something else by coming up with new forms of coexistence and collaborations on and off stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia, for these wonderful and inspiring questions that you open about the values that we need to share in this process of green transformation, and thinking about the not just green agenda, but how to become, you mentioned in one picture, togetherness, and or other stuff which are oriented towards solidarity, and I think coexistence and things like that are really important. So we will talk about it later. And now I would like to give a floor to Tijana, our dear colleague, and Tijana, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Jovana, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this. I'm very excited and grateful for this opportunity. So I'll share my screen with some kind of presentation I have, so it's easier for me to talk about some positions of mine. So I'm a playwright and dramaturg, and I graduated from the Faculty of Dramatic Arts, where I currently work as a teaching assistant. And the thing is, that's a formal part of my education, but from local perspective in Serbia and actually in the region, there is not any formal part of our education that teaches us how to work in TYA, which is, I think, a sad thing, but I would like for that to be changed. And on the other hand, there's also not that much talking about green transformation, which is also hopefully going to change. And I myself, now being the part of this educational system on this other side, not being a student anymore, but being a teacher in a way, I'm trying to encourage that with our students. But yeah, like while I was studying, this formal part of my education was lacking. TYA, which I was interested in, not only working for children and youth, but also working with them, which I had some experience while studying. But the thing is, that's when I discovered next generation programs. Julia mentioned ACITEJ, and that's one of the programs ACITEJ, or ACITE, I'm not sure how we're pronouncing it, organizes, and it's actually for young artists that are interested in working in TYA. And my first encounter with Next Generation program was in Frankfurt am Main in Germany, and that was actually the first time I encountered people who are working in TYA and actually in different cultural contexts, which was very important for me in broadening my perspectives about not only TYA, but theater in general. And being part of that actually made me enroll into a PhD studies, artistic PhD studies at our faculty, with desire to work more and more deep in theater for young audiences. And also a nice thing happened then here in Serbia. ASITEŽ Serbia actually organized first regional next generation program that was eligible for people from ex-Yugoslav countries and some other Western Balkan region countries. And that actually was the starting point for meeting people from theater world in our region that I actually didn't know before. And we started this Last Bullet Point regional platform from the first step. And actually, it's now working as a kind of international regional network that tries to support young theater artists and theater workers, even pedagogues, or people who are in different ways connected to theater for young audiences, and tries to make them more visible. We just had our first regional playwriting competition, so I think it's getting more and more big and will have more impact. And also one thing that was important for me in my professional development, especially when it comes to green transformation and working in theater for young audiences, was Festival of Ecological Theater for Children and Youth in Bačka Palanka. It's a city in Serbia, a very small town actually, that actually doesn't have a theater. It doesn't have any kind of cultural institution that has its own productions, that has some kind of continuity in cultural life. And this theater exists there for 28 years now. For a couple of years, I was its curator, and that also gave me a chance to see how theaters and theater makers, especially in the region, but even in Europe, because it got bigger by years, how they think of ecological theater and what were the tendencies back then when festival was formed, and how those things change now, and how there are more and more theater performances that are ecologically aware, at least, if not more. And also, I think that are the most important points for my personal and professional development regarding TYA and green theater. And also I've worked on some productions, so I'll mention a couple of them. The first one was White Mane, which was in Theater in Šabac. It's also a town in Serbia. And not only it spoke about topics that are important for us and for our society, such as social justice, or the question of who has the privilege of using nature resources and stuff like that. But it also was green in a way, in the means of its production. But also an important thing for this production, for me at least, was that it was made for young audiences, but it also included young people in the working process. So that was an important thing for director Irena Ristic and for me as artistic team who made this show, to include those young people, not only as our audience, not only to invite them as being spectators, but also to include them in the process. Also, there was the Coconut Thieves that was done in one theater for children in Belgrade, and it also spoke about similar questions and topics, such as the question of nature and its resources and the right to use it, or how to keep it alive. And it also tended to be green in its production means, reusing some natural materials and trying not to spend resources effortlessly. But the biggest leap, I would say, in my professional career that I made professionally, artistically, was Do Birds Have the Capacity for Fun, the latest production of BTEF Theater. The thing is, last year's or the year before edition of BTEF had the topic of a world without people, and the festival questioned a lot of question topics of ecological catastrophes and environmental crisis. And so they invited us as artistic team to do something that's going to be connected to that main topic. And that was not only challenging for me in the way of exploring new forms and ways of speaking about those things, as Julia mentioned, like how do we change narratives when speaking about those topics, and how do we approach our audiences now? But it was also, in a way, an experiment in its artistic form completely, because it's a puppetry production, but more specifically it uses objects, so it's a theater of object show, but not any objects, but household objects that we transformed into puppets and robots that are on the stage instead of people. And that was, I think, the biggest shift that we made, because the very play that I wrote also speaks about how humans coexist with animals, with plants, and even with machines and robots. So we tried from the very beginning not to have an anthropocentric show, but to question those things, to question our anthropocentricity that we tend to have in all spheres of our lives. But it also followed that idea in its form. So director Nikolay Sakovic, who actually explores site-specific theater puppetry and theater of objects, he, I think, made a great form for this kind of story. Maybe we can speak about that a bit more later. I think Jovana planned that. But yeah, I would say that was the latest thing I do, and maybe the biggest leap I took. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tijana, for these very interesting and important examples for our local scene and contribution to the way of thinking which is necessary in this context. And now I will give the floor to Emily to share with us her thoughts as a from the perspective of performing arts, theater for young audience, but also as a member of Pasitež International Executive Committee.
Thank you, Jovana. So I will start with saying that in a way I engaged first with sustainability as a citizen and a woman more than as a professional, and that for a time I was committed in some efforts of thoughts about sustainability, but didn't know really how to deal with this in my professional life. First, because maybe when I started to think about this 15 years ago, I ran a small theater, so small with such a small budget that in a way we were sustainable because we had no money for many things. So, I didn't drive a lot to see performances everywhere, or I didn't fly, I think I did not, or maybe once. So, all those topics were so obvious, and in a way I felt like I could not do much more. And just to explain, in France, most of the theaters are receiving houses. We put some money in productions, but we do not have artistic team on the board. Some, the biggest one have, but most of the theater do not. So it's a big difference because I'm not an artist and I work with artists all the time, but in my team, we are only people caring about, management and finance and marketing, public relations and stuff. So I cannot act from an artistic perspective. I have to wonder, what can I do now that I run a bigger theater, a stronger one, even if it's not such a big one, but I have more, in a way, possibilities to act in a sustainable way and to make choices. And the only thing is that my place is, the theater is in a big cultural hive in Marseille. I do not have to run my own venues. The Théâtre Massalia is not really a theater because it's an organization, and we share venues with different structures in a very huge place in Marseille, in the center of the city. And there are 4 venues, and we share them, and we do not actually deal with all about the techniques and logistics things about these venues. So I cannot directly decide whether we have to do it differently or not, because I have to ask for these venues, and I cannot decide how to work on this place more sustainably. So for a time, again, when I started to work there 10 years ago, I felt again like, okay, what can I do? And La Friche is very huge. We are 65, I think, different structures there, from very small structure, which is one artist in his place or her place, to bigger organizations like mine, but we are only 10 people. And we share different studios, venues, workplaces from all kinds. And we are about 400 people working there. And it's an old place that used to be a tobacco factory and turned into this big cultural place. But of course, it's old and not very sustainable, because if you want it to be warm in the winter or not so hot in the summer, then you have to, use a lot of energy in order to have this. And it's very big, so recycling and all that kind of stuff is always a big issue anyway. So when I started to talk about this with the people on the board of this big organization, the first reaction was to say, oh my God, you're right, but it's so big. How can we deal with this? So one of the first thing I built, in a way, was a kind of green incubator group in this place, just to gather people who, as I used to, and as I still do, were committed to sustainability in their own way, in their own life, and try to find together small solutions for this place, and to make one step after another. Because I knew that if we had only people being the manager or directors and feeling like they have a huge responsibility but have no idea how to deal with it, then we would not go very far, and it would be like, wealthy, this.
Emily, I think you muted yourself.
Oh, sorry, I don't know.
It takes just for a few seconds, so don't worry.
I was just thinking, it's just like everywhere in the world, it's okay, sustainability is very important, but you have so much to do first. So it was like this in this place too. And this small incubator has been working, I think, for 5 or 6 years now, and it is really a thing. It's really a place where people started to make very small steps, and not to, disturb too much the people working there. But step after that, they convinced most of the people to do things differently. So it was all about caring, taking care of the people, and caring about recycling and stuff. Mm-hmm. So one of the way was, gathering positive energies together and make them work on how can we do more and better in sustainability. And as in my place, I felt like we had to do more because we care about children and young people. We are a place dedicated to performing arts for young people, young audiences. So we have to care about this because it's our audience is the one who has a lot and will have a lot to do about sustainability in the future. And at a time in France, most of the shows, for example, that were written for children and young people about sustainability, 10 years ago, they used to, in a way, reflect about sustainability, but then end all the time by saying to the children, well, now you will do something. Like we are, we the adults, we failed already, and it's now you will have to do this. And I couldn't stand that. And I felt like I'm not an artist, so I cannot say to the artist, oh, come on, you can't say this. I can, of course, but I mean, this won't change the way they want to write or perform or direct. So I could only act on my own and share this with people and with artists and say, maybe we could find our own way to, share with the kids our thoughts about this. We cannot be too dark, but it's always something that TYA is, the strong darkness is impossible. You always have to offer hopes for the future. And then we have to share responsibilities and reflections on sustainability, and we cannot say to the children that they will have to do it. And so to me, sustainability is also about the way you care about people, the people you work with, for example. So it's a big issue, and it goes from recycling to the way you manage your team. So I try to, I've been trying to act on in all these directions to always think about how can I do better in the way I share, in the way I share the issues with the people I work with, but also in the way I manage them. And it's also about, of course, mobility. And sometimes, it goes together. For example, I have a woman in my team. She lives far away from theater, so she has to drive. So we had long conversations about how could she maybe be more sustainable and in a way have a more comfortable life by not coming to the theater each day of the week, but maybe work home if it was okay for her with the kids and stuff. So I think this is sustainability too. And in a way, when I came into ACITEJ, I thought that it's important today is that it's a big issue, and it's not that easy everywhere to deal with this. And it's also, of course, very different from an African perspective than from a French one or from a European one. And it's very different from South Africa to Asia or Latin America. It's different everywhere. And so it's more about listening to each other and try to find our own step-by-step process and be ambitious, but be in a way in respect of what the people have to deal with in their daily life, daily professional life. So it's today Julia and I, we built this sustainability committee in ACITEJ, and I think it's a very experimental place to try to improve sustainability in TYA. And in ACITEJ France, we have also an ethics committee, which deal with sustainability, accessibility and stuff. And it's all about the same. We cannot pretend that we know how to do things, but we know that the more we share and reflect together and also make real concrete decisions together, the more we can, improve in different manners. And with these big issues, people don't want to feel by themselves, having no idea what to do. And the last thing, but we heard that with Tiana, for example, is that, of course, I'm very interested in the way, as Julia said, we need new stories, new aesthetics, new protagonists. And the way we have now in France too, we have a different kind of writing, directing, where nature, environment, animals, plants find, you know, are on stage, not only as a scenography or some kind of frame, but really part of the world. And being not so anthropocentric is exactly what we need. So it now, for a few years in France, I can feel like artists do find their way to write or choreograph to it's all about different aesthetics, I think, but it's at the very beginning. So I'm looking forward to seeing it improving in the future too.
Yeah, thank you, Emily, for this. Yeah, opening the questions, which are very close to the question that I would like to share with you, because we are thinking about the challenges, and we are facing the challenges in every context. We are always talking about the context. Our context is not the same as yours, but in every context, in every part of the world, we are facing with really strong challenges, not just in a sense of implementing production procedures, but also implementing the narratives which will be oriented towards rising awareness. So it is really combination of decision, what kind of future we will try to make together and to collaborate on it. And my first question for all panelists is to maybe make it bit closer to the peculiarities of theater for young audience in the context of green transformation. What would, from your point of view and from your experience, can be the best methodology to embed green thinking and philosophy in theater for young audience? Whoever wants to be first.
Maybe I can say something.
Tatiana.
Okay, yeah. So I was thinking about that a lot, actually, when we were talking about all the topics we're going to speak about. I'm not sure I can give a solution, or any of us can. But the thing is, I think those children that we are, young audiences, children and youth, that we are making theater for them, their generation is specific in a way that they were born into this discourse of climate change and environmental crisis. And that's, I think, what differs them from some older generations that are maybe still making theater for them. Mm-hmm. So I think the main question is to have them included in those processes, hear what they have to say about it. Because while doing this show, I mentioned while the birds thing, we were actually aware of this trap that we might get into, that we're just going to speak about something that's known to everyone, that's very common, that's common knowledge. And actually we had test audience from time to time that were young people that were actually sharing with us what of those things we say, we speak about, they do know, what they don't. And we shared knowledge and experiences, ours to them, and listened to theirs that they were telling us. So I think it is important to have young people included as much as we can, and listen to what they have to say. So I think that's maybe the first step. And if we speak about some systemic issues, then I think that's a whole another, like totally different thing, and much more complicated.
We will speak a bit about the policy side a bit later, but I think Julia has something to add.
I was just listening to Tiana. I was just thinking that there's a lot of discussion around the freedom of art, of course. And when you start to enforce green thinking, like how will it maybe narrow our artistic choices, and will all the stories in future be around climate change? Will everything be around how to be a better vegetarian? And this is a big fear. And I just by what you said about the younger generation and the young people that are born into another situation, because for them these changes are a given. It's for us it's a discovery. For us, understanding that what is going on is a discovery. For them it's the status quo. They have never experienced anything else. And so I think these stories and what we are going to tell in the future, they have we need to get to a different level, because we should stop thinking this is something that is narrowing down our options, but actually what do we gain? Like if we say goodbye to a lot of things and a lot of thinking about what is important in life and what would be different, I think we can gain a lot. But this is to embrace this as a chance and as something that is just given, and stop struggling so hard by saying maybe it's not happening, maybe the scientists are wrong. Like lots of the shows that I watch with youngsters, they always come and at some point they mention this, like what is the biggest risk if the scientists are wrong and there is no climate change? Like what would this mean? Would we have made the world a better place for nothing? Because so this is like thinking of this, that this is not really a risk, but it's a choice and it's a chance for all of us. And this is just what came up to my mind about your statement.
Emily, do you have any reflection on the
Yeah, it's just
possible methodology that we can implement?
I don't know about that, but I agree with you too. And I feel like listening to the young people and starting to create new stories together is also connected to me to what we call cultural rights. And in a way, being sustainable, as I said, is always also about, having everyone having a place where he or she can be comfortable and live a good way. And that's about sustainability. It's a general thing. So in a way, sharing with young people and listening to them and trying to find how we can create new stories including the common knowledge, you're right, that we have, and try not to be didactic or hopeless, or it's something we will have to face with them. I don't think we can do that. Of course, we can have our own perspective, but I think as TYA committed people, we have to really share this with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Julia, of course.
Sorry, I'm still for the methodology. I am not looking for a solution or an answer. Even I just had the question. Maybe it is kind of a method that we stop thinking in this concurrence thing. And that's what I really like about the green movement, is that there's this thought of open source, a lot of networking, of we're stronger together. We can only handle this if we do it all at the same time. And it's interesting because a very famous green artist in Germany, Nicola Bramkamp, she has started the green thinking and green practice over 10 years ago in her theater. And she at some point she was on a podium and she said, yeah, it's really weird. In the beginning, when we were the first and the only ones who were greening their practice, and then all the others started and people started and it was everywhere. And my first reaction was, oh my God, this is our topic. We are the pioneers. We are the importance here. And then I realized, oh, this is stupid. We need this. We can only do this together. And I think this is something, if there's a method, it's only to stop this concurrency thing and wanting to be the experts in green method, green practice, but only by sharing everything. And this is, everyone tells, whenever I do workshop or anything, people like Emily told us, like, there's so much questions. Can I do this? How do I do this for the theaters? It's such a, like, this calculating emission thing. It seems so undoable, but there is already so much information here, and there's so much knowledge, and if you reach out to the right persons and you get into the right networks, you can find it. And so if there's maybe something helpful as the method, is sharing and networking.
Yeah, definitely. This kind of collaborative way of thinking is something that we need to follow in the present, but for sure in the future. And something that is challenges and the position of theater in general, but we are speaking about theater for young audience and the perspectives. What is your what is your view about the current position of theater for young audience in this? Maybe Tiana, you can answer locally, and Julia and Emily maybe more internationally, in the context of green philosophy. What are the challenges? Sometimes we are talking about the, I don't know, budget. Sometimes we are talking about new paradigm in old structure. Sometimes we are talking about the lack of narrative. Sometimes, what you see as the biggest challenge or the challenges for the implementing the new philosophies? Now we can talk about the programming, but also the working procedures in a theater for young audience. Is it policy? Is it Julia, you are mentioning networking, which is connected to advocacy and advocating for new policies that we should implement. What is the problem for example, in our region, we have just few examples of this format where projects are really taught through the lenses of green philosophy, and it is really rare in our not country but in region. So what is the lack? What is the problem with it? Can you share your thoughts about it with us?
Okay, maybe I can say, as you said, a bit locally and maybe regionally, but I think the thing here is lack of awareness of need to speak about those things or to do things in a green way. I think that's what we lack the most. And when we speak about institutional theaters and institutions in general, it's always this tendency of having this green productions comes from the individuals and not from the institutions. So it's not a rule, but an exception mostly. And those productions, actually, we're most sustainable when we don't have money in institutions and funds, which happens almost always. And then imagine how it is for the independent scene. So it's even harder. But what I see here is that independent theater scene, especially for young audiences in Serbia and maybe even regionally, is more green oriented than institutions are, which I see as a nice thing, actually, because maybe then this change will come from that side of specters. So yeah, it's not always lack of funds, but lack of awareness and necessity to have these topics and these practices included in your
I forgot to mention one more perspective that came to my mind. It is the lack of that, something that we are working in Green Art Incubator. Actually, with in a connection with the professionals, we got a response that they are interested, they are aware, but they don't know how. And that kind of capacity building and trainings for the professionals are very important to learn how to step into this really complex metrics, how to reconstruct and rethink the procedures of production. So that is
Yeah, but it also means re-establishing and hierarchies and authorities in these systems that are very strong and slowly moving. So I think that's why these things come more often from independent scene than from institutions, at least here.
Yeah. Julia, do you have anything to add on this?
A lot, actually. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, to structure
there's-
Yeah.
Yes, because it's really interesting, and there's so many. Like you started your question with the new paradigm in an old system, and I think this is this is the biggest problem, because we always try to fit everything into our schedule and into our ways of doing things, instead of realizing or recognizing that we should just stop doing things the way we are used to, and that we need a new practice. And on an international exchange, the brilliant director of Institut Français, she took over, and she had a great expression saying, we need to develop a new climate reflex. So like this feeling of, oh, this is uncomfortable because I need to do things differently and I need to unlearn, and like we need a climate reflex with everything we do, like in every step I take, every action I have, asking myself automatically, can I do it in a different way? And in this different way would be the greener way or more sustainable way. And so I think this is very important, and it's talking a lot about, you said we don't have the capacity maybe, and this is also because of the system. We have to, we are so into the market, and we are so in this capitalist logic that we have to produce to gain our money, to gain our support, to be worth it, that it's really weird that culture became such a product fixed business, that we always feel like we lack time. We cannot stop producing. We have to put out our next premiere. And I think that what I hear from a lot of artists into the field is they are just say, stop it. We need time for new processes. We need time for new exchange. We cannot, for the society, we need artists talking to scientists, talking to architects, talking to landscape designers. We need different networks. We need different ways of connections to really start rebuilding a new, not rebuilding the system, actually, it's more like starting a new system. And so there's lots of, yeah, I could go on this a lot, because it's really very interesting, I think.
Thank you. Emily, do you have something to?
Maybe I feel a lot like Julia about this, because in France too, we need to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really related to the fact that for the artists, if they want to have some money, they need to produce as well. It's exactly the same situation. So it's a reflection we share with the Ministry of Culture, for example, is about, and it's not only about TYA, it's about the whole sector of performing arts. How can we be sure that the artists can have a normal life with what can their economical be, so that they have money, but they do not have to produce a different show every year or twice a year, just, to get some money. So slowing down, I think it's all about this for the artists, but they need to gain some money. And for us, because we are asked to have, a number of people for audience. And so if we say, okay, but now we want to have less performances a year, maybe more of each, but, just let's slow down and let's share different moments with the audience that may not be changing the show every week and trying something new. Then we need to have the support of our financial partners, of course. So it's a lot about the system, the economical system as well. And I can hear sometimes artists that are afraid that this way of thinking can, be how to say this, be an obstacle to their artistic freedom. So it's about this too, that maybe the artists need to have time to find their own way in this challenges, and especially in TYA, because most of them really feel concerned about climate change and the way this will impact the young people. But how can they agree with this and feel like they still can, you know, have their total artistic freedom? And it's not that easy, and I do not have any solutions for that. But I think the more they can share together about this, the more they will find a way not to be afraid about this. But as Julia was saying, in France too, you can feel like it's a lot about competition between the artists in a way, because if you want to sell your show, it has to be better than the next neighbors, you know, neighbors next door one. So it's really not that easy to, because it's all about changing the way you think.
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah, the changing the philosophy, the organization, culture, and the things that are coming beside it. And now we thank you for your reflection on the questions, but also on the sharing the ideas what we can think about in the future. And now I will give the floor to the audience. As I mentioned when we were in green room, I would like to make a dialogue also, and with the audience, but the professionals who are here. So do we have a question from the Zoom observers at the moment? If not, I have a lot of more questions for you, but I would like to give the opportunity to others to ask the questions. Miljana, please.
So first of all, thank you all for sharing your ideas and experiences. I have some kind of doubt, like in our case in Serbia, I think that artists are not that aware about the implementation of all of this in the productions, because they see it as a limit, as a bad thing, that someone is like making everything harder for them. And I think that we somehow need to take a step back and not to force them to be eco-friendly while working or making productions, but to really change their mind about it, to actually show them that they are the ones who can improve that situation in other people's lives, like through their art, through the culture and everything. So I wanted to ask you, how were your experiences at the beginning? Were your colleagues already aware about this? So, or was it challenge, or is it still a challenge, or you overcome that problem?
Julia.
Again, maybe just from some international perspectives, it's really it's very different in Germany, because it has been a topic for a while now, and it is very popular, and it is also supported. I mean, this is always a question: if there's money in it, you can motivate people more easily, because now we have fundings by Kulturstiftung des Bundes. They would give you money to do a production emission free, but they will give you the money for doing it, and they will indicate the expertise. They will help you doing it. So it's really encouraging. It's very helpful, but of course it's a luxury that we have here. And from before we had it, when the first workshop I did with colleagues here that also had, some of them, they were also afraid and were thinking of limitations a lot. What sometimes helps is when you point out the 17 sustainable development goals, because they are so wide, and they are so embracing so many topics, that afterwards almost every artist will find a topic they are interested in, because it is about equality, it is about doing solutions on hunger or poorness. And I just had the experience that people found it encouraging to realize that they are already working on it and that they are already doing something, and not like they are against it or they are looked at like the enemies or the problem or some, like, you know, like the opponents, but find something and something that you want to start from together. And also the young audiences, I think, is a very strong argument here, because like Tiana said, if you ask young people what they're interested in and what is important to them, you will easily find that this is a topic, and then still you can find a lot of ways to deal with these topics. So this is just like from my personal experience, but also when I was talking to our colleague from Iran in the EC, when she first heard about sustainability and like me trying to define what it is, she was like, it's so interesting, Julia, I've never heard of it. But the thing is, you know, us in Iran, we have real problems. We cannot prioritize. So it is about what do you define as a priority? What do you define as a problem? And how do you want to take care of things? And the only thing that I could, like, I don't feel like advising anything, but what we have been learning so far as people that are advertising and advocating on sustainability is that whenever you start preaching or you start like trying to force people, you lose, it's gone. And in this way, it helps me to say the cultural sector in their emissions, it doesn't matter. If you, like a colleague says, if you want to, you could slaughter animals on stage, like animals that will die out soon. It doesn't matter, because your effect, your footprint as a cultural sector, as the performing arts, is so minimal compared to the rest of it. If you really are afraid of your personal artistic freedom, then go ahead. But please just think of ways and think of what other stories could be there and what is in there for you. And I think this is the only chance we have, like staying open and acknowledging that people are in very different places and they have very different needs and interests, and maybe we can find something common to start from.
Yeah, do we have, thank you, Miljana, and thank you, Julia, for the answering. Do we have some other questions inspired by the presentation, or something that is reflecting on the topic of the panel? Mm-hmm. So I will continue because we have a few minutes more, and I will ask, for example, Julia and Emily, you have experience in a different position in ACITEJ, in your national but also international one. What is the let's say possibility of networks, not networking, but of networks, in a sense of giving support to the development of change, of platforms for changes in theater for young audience. What are your impressions in that sense? What are the positions of networks? Because I just want to add, in your work, and you have in ACITEJ sustainability group for sustainability, that you are already tackling this topic with the members. What are the possibilities of improving the capacities of members in that sense? I'm sure that we will speak more about this issues next year again, and one of the possibilities are these kind of meetings, like ACITEJ artistic gathering. But what else we can do from the perspective of networks?
maybe I can start and you will go on. It's a pretty good question, and it's a question we are working with right now because, you know, when we were in Helsingborg in May, it was in a way, it was a start for the Sustainability Committee to face the reality of sustainability in those kind of artistic gatherings, for example, which are acetage spot gatherings. So we had to do something on it. And yeah, 1 month ago, we shared some report about that from the Swedish, and our Swedish colleague was explaining how this in a way was disappointing because he was quite ambitious on his own about this and full of ideas, but as someone's, you know, as we all said, it's not that easy because people may or may not be so aware of it, and they always think that it's such a challenge and how can they do this. So we are trying right now to build a committee of people coming from different places in the world where we can really understand how we do understand sustainability. What does that mean? And can we really find one way, or probably not, but you know, to face this together? And how can we share knowledges, good practices, and maybe more enthusiasm and you know, way to feel like you're not facing it on your own, but many people do this and they care. And I think it's one thing we need to know, that people all around the world care about this and want to share this with young people and want to feel responsible for something in it. So in this way, we are trying to build a committee where we will ask each of our members who would like to be asked, where do you start? And what is the main challenges you have to face? And what would you like to implement or improve right now? And then we could work together to find solutions from, you know, our members, because in a way, I'm sure there's been good practices in India that I have no idea about. So it's more about knowing that, as Julia said, you know, you cannot tell people, oh, you should do this. But if they ask for something, maybe we can find a solution by asking the others, or maybe it's more simple than we think, or maybe we already do good things and we do not even know that. So it's, in a way, it's I think it's really what we are working on right now.
Yeah, great and important. And Julia, do you have?
Yeah, I agree with Emily, and for what it's worth from my research and experience, I have to say that what is true we have comes to mobility. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Now yes, but last 1 or 2 sentences not.
Okay, so I will start over. I was just saying that a colleague from Ibero-America, she's when we talk about the challenges of mobility in our profession, like who has the right and the privilege to travel in the future to take a plane, she's always very strict and says, don't privatize sustainability. That's just stupid. So when it comes to this global perspective and what tool or method do we have, I would go for put pressure on decision makers. It's not the single company, it's not the single artist. It is just this shift of awareness of all of us that we will vote the party and the politicians that go for the green solution. But it's not us personally who will save the planet. It was very hard for me to accept that, because I was always there saying theater will change the world and theater will make the world a better place. I still do believe in it, but in a different way. Like I now believe in different mechanisms, and I think that our advocacy and our lobbyism is very important, and that we should make sure that the voices of our audiences are being heard in this concern. And so this is why also before, when Milena was asking, I'm really willing to let go the individual choice. I think as long as you support the one who makes the green decision, we are on a good way, at least.
The conclusions on this answer is, or to try to summarize something that is very important from the perspective of networking. Emily mentioned this sharing of good examples between the members, because it is super important to know what others are doing, and to make kind of capacity building opportunities. And also Julia mentioned advocacy, which are, I think, in these days maybe two very important direction for the networking framework. Yeah, Julia.
Excuse me, it's just because I forgot. Of course, I just wanted to repeat, because I guess most of you know, but there are great examples like Julie's Bicycle in the UK, Creative Carbon Scotland, who are already, like, if you are looking for good examples and for strong partners who have a lot of insight and impact in this area. It's for now, it's not we as TYA, or not even as ASITE, we're just starting, so we are not the best reference to but we can just point you in the directions and say, you can check out Infinite Souls in India as a great company. You could check the Fearless Collective in India. So if you're looking for good practice, or if you're looking for bigger cases like Julie's Bicycle, Great Carbon Scotland. And also, what is really great news, I think, that ASITE International decided to become one of the first networking systems, like networking organizations, cultural organizations in Europe, to get eco-labels. So we are just entering a process of green practice within ASITE. So hopefully by this, we will have a lot more to share, and a lot more of insight and information and good practice on this organizing and system thing in the future.
We will share the news on artistic gathering next year, I guess, that we will have something to speak more about as examples for licensing and everything. So we have another question from the chat, and I think it will be the last one. You see Mirko Nikolic. Thank you, Mirko, for your question. The question for reflection to all the panelists. Have you observed if there is some sort of paradigm shift or transformation coming from the young people in the sense of the theater art itself, and what would that be? What are the expectations, demands of the present future theater, thinking alongside how youth-led movements have already changed the public space and terms of discussion in many places? It is really interesting question that we can connect also with new ideas of young activists in performing in a sense of performativity. So who would like to try to answer to Mirko's question?
I can try, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure I will completely. But yeah, I mean, okay, first, depending on who are all the young people and what do we think of when we say young people in the sense of theater art. I mean, I worked with some teenagers and made shows with them. So from that experience, I would say they expect things that matter to them. So not to tell stories that you think they should listen to and they should hear, but stories that they're interested in, stories that matter to them. So we were making a lot of rounds of workshops in which they spoke about how they see the future looks like. The show was called Utopia. So yeah, it was like what utopia means to them. And yeah, that's when I realized we shouldn't be that patronizing not then, but like it was clear to me from a long time ago, but we should not be patronizing and making some didactic shows, but to really take their thinking into account. And also, I think from this experience from Bitev Theater, I think they're also, they need to get their imagination tackled by things they're also surrounded with in spheres apart from theater. So I don't know, like we have drones, we have robots, we have stuff that are very well known to them. And I think that also works in bringing young people to theater, because there's also this gap when kids go to theater for children, and then you have teenagers who they don't want to go to children's theater. They're still maybe not eligible for this theater for adults, and they feel excluded. So I think we should also think about that when making theater for young audiences, for young people. I'm not sure if I fully answered your question, but something from my experience, yeah, I could say.
Yeah, Julia. Thank you, Tiana and Julia. Please continue.
Before I forget, Tiana, I would love to read the bird show. I don't know if it's available in English or if you have a summary or something, but if I
have
could...
it in English and I have the video, so I can send you all.
Yes, please. I would. Thank you. That would be awesome. And just like from another perspective, even in Germany, what is really interesting right now, that the question of empowerment, or like what does matter to young people and what do they want to do on stage or to see on stage, in Germany it is slightly shifting towards a new empowerment in decision making. So youngsters, like young adults, they start founding theater committees, or I don't know how to put it, like they want to be part of the decision making in a theater. They don't only want to be the audience and the ones that get addressed by the creators, by the artists, but they want to be part of those guys that take the decisions, and that like from the real beginning. And this is a really interesting thing, I think, because it's so they are emancipating. No, this is not the right word, but you know, like they are
It takes a bit longer.
Sorry, never mind. So it's just they want to be part of bigger decisions, and I think this is really interesting that they start talking and stepping up for their own interests and their own voices.
Yeah. Now I think that we need to finish and close this session. I'm not happy about it. I think that we tackle some ideas which are important for all of us to think about them in the future. And also I hope that we inspire the audience with our examples and other perspectives and angles that we shared. I would like to thank to ASSITEJ Serbia in preparing for collaboration in preparing this panel, and also I'm super happy to see you all in person next year at the artistic gathering in Belgrade. So thank you very much, and yeah, we will see on some other occasion. I hope soon in the future.
Thank you. It was great being here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
We'll keep in touch. Bye. Bye.